Hi, Lisa Pierce, Executive Editor of Packaging Digest, with some news, big news in the packaging design and decorating industry area. I just learned that the Labelexpo series of events has expanded and been rebranded. And we're lucky enough to have an opportunity to talk with Andy Thomas Emons. He's the strategic director at Informa Markets for the Labels and Packaging Group. Andy, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, Lisa. Pleasure.
So tell us about this rebranding. Why do it and why do it now?
Yes, so Labelexpo will become LOUPE, LOUPE. It's an instrument well known to label printers, of course, and all packaging printers. So we will become, so first of all, just to let you know that this is still the Labelexpo show here in Europe. The first show under the new rebrand will be Labelexpo Americas next year, which becomes LOUPE Americas 2026. We will be keeping the tagline formerly Labelexpo, just so people can orientate themselves in the early years of the change. But the real reason, Lisa, is because, you know, if you look at the history of Labelexpo, you know, I've been going to the show now for 30 odd years, and it started out really very much as a kind of pressure-sensitive converting show, pressure-sensitive label converting show. You're looking at very narrow web presses, 8-inch, 10-inch machines, converting pressure-sensitive labels. But then really what happened as Labelexpo developed over the years, new materials came along, shrink sleeves and wrap around, and new filmic labels, in mold. The show really expanded out, you know, to embrace all these new forms of label. And indeed, I remember that when shrink sleeves first came to the show, a lot of people in the self-adhesive sector were saying, well, that's not a label. It's a flexible packaging. It shouldn't be a Labelexpo, you know. But our real point has been we've always followed the industry wherever it's gone. But from our existing base of label converters. So what we saw probably 10 to 12 years ago, was flexible packaging coming into Labelexpo.
Big time.
With you remember that HP launched, in fact, the 20,000 press at Labelexpo, and I remember talking to Alain Barcheny at the time and saying, well, why would you launch a flexible packaging press at a label show? You know, and his answer was, well, because label converters are the ones who are going to make this work. You know, we are developing a new market here in short-run, value-added flexible packaging, and it's the agility and the mentality of the label converter which is going to drive this through. And of course, so it proved, and really over the last, I'd say 10 to 12 years, but particularly over the last few years, flexible packaging has become an integral part of Labelexpo. And if you look at the last Europe show, 2023, 40% of visitors on their registration forms showed an interest in flexible packaging. And what was interesting for us as well is that 25% of visitors marked an interest in folding cartons, which came as a bit of a surprise, because obviously at that time we weren't promoting folding cartons, and there was. But I think what we're seeing is a big shift in the industry. I think that we're seeing a lot of consolidation, and so a lot of label converters now belong to bigger groups, and those groups will often have flexible packaging divisions and folding carton divisions. But I think also we're seeing some pressure from brand owners, from buyers. You know, whatever you may think about the war against plastics, and I know that we probably share very strong opinions on that one. But the fact is but the fact is that a lot of brands are looking at fiber-based packaging, folding cartons, bag in box type technologies. And really,
Undeniably.
yeah. And then we got approached by Canon and Edel. And once Canon bought Edel, Edel had the inline folding carton technology. So rather than, I call it a traditional sheet fed operation where you're printing on one machine, taking those sheets to a second machine to die cut or to foil, multi-stage, it's a long lead times. But if you're doing it in one pass, in one line on basically what's a label press effectively, it's robust, it's built to hold the weight of a roll of carton. But so the first time that press is here at Labelexpo, and of course, it's created a lot of interest, and probably around about 25 to 30% of the exhibitors here are co-suppliers, to the folding carton industry, to the flexible packaging industry, to the label industry, the ink suppliers, the coating, the tooling suppliers. So the trend that we're seeing very much is that from our existing core technology base at Labelexpo, which is inline flexo, digital, hybrid, they're pushing out into these new sectors and really disrupting the traditional market by offering, in the case of folding cartons, basically single pass, and you can add whatever you, as a label converter, screen or hologram insertion, you can reverse the web, you can print on the back, you can end up with a finished carton, which can go straight to the customer. At the same time, Lisa, I'd say that the other thing that we've noticed at Labelexpo, the way it's developed, is that we have at the show all the coating companies, companies like Actega, and although they supply the label industry, but they also develop barrier coatings, for paper flexible packaging and for folding cartons. So Actega here at the show is launching a barrier coating for confectionery products, which are kind of fresh confectionery. So basically, they're eliminating the PE barrier layer.
Okay.
And so when we discussed this with Actega before the show, they were saying, well, we had this technology, we had this barrier coating technology, but we don't really know where to show it. Because there's no folding carton show. I'm talking about Europe, and I'm not talking about the packaging, I'm talking about the print and converting. And then we're hearing also from the flexible packaging, there is no flexible packaging show.
Right.
So when companies want to promote, like Actega, there's barrier coatings to create monomaterial flexible packaging and folding cartons, they're the same suppliers who are supplying the label industry with primers and with inks and with coatings. So the idea of LOUPE really is that we're kind of creating a hub. It's like a new hub really. So it's not exclusively focused on labels, although labels remains, at the core of it. The most people who visit the show are label converters, and most people who exhibit are exhibiting label equipment or substrates. But if you look at on the show floor today, there's a lot of mid-web presses, like 26-inch presses from Torpedo and from Marcandi and from Omet, Lombardi and such like. And when you go on the show floor, they're converting flexible packaging,
Yes.
and so label converters now want to understand about barrier properties. They need to understand, their customers now, the new customers in flexible packaging are saying must be monomaterials. And so I think that the next stage of LOUPE will be probably a kind of upstream event on top of it, which will bring in the coating companies, the materials suppliers, one stage up from the converters. So
Right.
that's a very long way of saying, Lisa, really why we decided to change the name. And LOUPE appeared to us to be, it's a double acronym, so also stands for labels and outer pack embellishment.
Yes, very clever how you've been able to combine those two meanings into the one word. Very clever. And I know, Andy, as you've been talking through how LOUPE is going to be different from some of the other printing events, because there are quite a number of printing only events that are out there, and how LOUPE is going to be different, where it's very focused and a niche with the labels, flexible carton. If you think about primary packaging, that's pretty much what I'm seeing here. Am I getting that right? Because the widths of primary packaging fit very nicely into the niche that Labelexpo has had all along. Maybe those larger secondary packaging or big club store packs, things like that. Do you still see maybe a fit with those, or is it pretty much the width of the press is going to kind of define the scope of the new LOUPE events?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the main answer is a purely practical one. Actually, Heidelberg did approach us in Labelexpo Americas about the possibility of building a sheet fed. Because if you think about the labels industry, the majority of primary label patching globally is still done by wet glue
Yes.
labeling on sheet fed presses. So I
In a
think that
lot of different
Heidelberg,
industries, very big industry still for food cans, and
yeah,
also in the pharmaceutical industry, still a lot in that industry for sheet-fed cut stock
yeah,
labels.
for sure. So we've had the finishing equipment here. Companies like Polar and Bloom show the cut stack finishing equipment from the sheets and guillotines. But it just takes too long to build those machines. Uh, so it'll just be Drupa probably where you'll see those bigger machines being built. And
Okay.
similarly with the CI and the gravure presses, there just isn't enough time. We don't have enough build-up time to build those presses and to take them down. And it's a 4-day show, 3-day show, 3 days in the States. So it's not really a viable proposition to build those machines. So
Correct. Yep.
so that's the practical part. And that's really what a 26-inch type machine has been. It's like the Goldilocks press. It's just not too big and and it's
I love that adjective, Goldilocks. It's a perfect description. Yep.
so they can build those machines here. That's kind of perfect. But I'd say that the second, if you like, kind of conceptual thing is, if you think of we think of it as like a Venn diagram, and that center circle in the Venn diagram is a core label industry technology, which is inline and now hybrid and digital. And if you draw another big circle on the folding cartons, we're not really interested in the sheet fed side, because that's so you just don't have time to build those machines,
Right.
and it's not really where our core audience is. Our core audience actually is in disrupting those markets. Like with flexible packaging, it's not a question of attacking them; it's a question of developing new market sectors, that complement what's out there. So we're not so much looking at the industrialized sheet fed multi-stage. That's why we're looking at inline, digital, and hybrid.
Okay.
And it's the same if you draw that same kind of big circle on the flexible packaging side. Where it intersects with Labelexpo is exactly in these inline, digital, hybrid. But what is interesting is that we have Comexi exhibiting the show floor. We have a Giave, who also develop wide web CI presses, and on the sheet-fed side we have Manroland and Goss. So what's kind of happening is that those suppliers to the outer circle, if you like, are also now looking at the label industry, because they're being faced with the same kind of issues that everybody is. Run lengths are coming down, multi SKUs, multiple variants. So in many cases, a lot of the jobs they were putting on the big machines, but they don't really want to be changing those machines over 3, 4 times a
Right.
day.
Mhm.
So they come to Labelexpo, the suppliers, and saying, well, you know, on the CI side, our presses are also coming down to the kind of your mid-web width. We want to hold your machines down to below 1,000 millimeters. It's kind of 30-inch, 32-inch, which is kind of in our area. So, and I think on Manro and Goss, again, it's because they want to be able. They're also saying there've been a lot of developments in sheet fed. We can't show a press here, but we're automating. We're having more processes in line. We're in line foiling now. We're going to be in line die cutting. We can have 7-color printing and hit with the Pantones, and so there's a lot of developments happening in the offset. And I think that's kind of it's an open house, and in that sense, we're quite happy for those suppliers out in the big circle to come in. But primarily, it's being driven from the inside out, if you like.
Okay. And that makes total sense. There's still so much advancements that are happening in printing technology in general, and then printing technology for a particular area, in this case, as we're talking about packaging. But I did want to say, you referenced this a little bit earlier, Andy. Package decorating is more than just printing. So the finishing part is a big piece. And I know over the years, Labelexpo had, kind of expanded into that, looking at smart packaging technologies, different things, perhaps embedded RFID chips or NFC tags. And I'm assuming that this is going to continue with the new events. It sounds like it is, correct? Because you did mention finishing a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Lisa. I mean, if you were at Chicago, I think last year, Labelexpo, we had a RFID zone.
Zone, yes, yes.
So and the reason for that is because RFID is being delivered primarily by label converters. I mean, you can buy the tags directly from Avery Dennison, and you can insert them onto a carton or a pallet, but primarily they're being delivered in some way, either a pre-cut label delaminated with a chip inside it, or so this again is a massive opportunity for label converters. And what we're seeing here in Europe is the EU has passed digital passport legislation, which basically means that every product, starting with apparel and electronics, but then moving outwards, has to have a digital twin in the cloud, which has to contain all the information about the packaging, about the materials, the inks, chain of custody, how it's going to be recovered, how many times reused products have been around the loop, all this information. And it's going to be accessed either by a QR code or by an RFID chip. And particularly looking at circular packaging, the ability to write back onto that chip, when a container has been around the loop, has it been washed? Is it now at the filling stage? The ability to track that. An individual consumer could actually track an individual package they've taken back, and watch that getting washed and brought back, refilled and sent back to them. And also, we've seen a Walmart mandate in the US, and that's common to all retailers now. It's global supply chain transparency, anti-counterfeit, all the kind of multiple things that RFID can do, but primarily they're being delivered by the label industry. And I think what we also see here is, if you have a folding carton, you could have one of these, like a Tamarack RFID inserter, and put it onto a folding carton line, like the Edo press here. So you could be creating smart cartons, using our core Labelexpo technology. So, and I think that the other thing we're seeing here on the decoration side, and that's why we use the word embellishment, is digital, it's digital embellishment now. So So we're seeing, for example, the ability to inkjet, varnish, even up to braille in some cases, if you have an XY,
Yes.
if you have an intermittent line, and this is a common technology that some of the companies here, like Jet Effects, are already kind of digitally embossing the laminates, on a laminator, which is then laminated to a pouch, which gives you the tactile effects and such like. So again, all this technology is at the show, and I think we can start to see that being pushed into these different packaging end-use segments.
Well, I know historically, Label Expo has targeted as the main attendee a package printer for, labels and then flexible and now getting into folding cartons. And that helps them stay ahead of some of the printing trends that they've experienced over the last, decade or so. Those short runs that you had mentioned, embellishment, again, you had mentioned the customization, which a lot of that is being driven by the digitalization of package printing. And then again, just the fast turnaround times that they have, which again, digital is helping with. But also in recent years, I shouldn't say recent years because this is easily going back 2 decades that I know of for sure, is that you've also the Label Expo shows have also kind of catered to those brand owners that you've just mentioned. And that's our core audience, Packaging Digest's core audience. So Andy, just, could you just explain to these brand owners why should they attend the new LOUPE? What did they get out of it?
Right. That's a great question, because we've when we look at our visitor database, pretty much all the big retailers, big brands send delegations to Label Expo. They tend to send their technical people. They don't
Okay.
tend to send their marketing people or their kind of advertising marketing people. They tend to send the people who are kind of looking at who specify the packaging. They want to see what's new. They want to see what's what's coming up. So when they talk to converters, they can say, well, I went to Label Expo and I saw that this. How do you think digital embellishment is going to affect? What can I do with that? Can I have personalized raised lettering, or but to be honest, I think we haven't specifically catered for brand owners. We did try having brand owner focused conferences
Okay.
around Label Expo, but what we kind of found was that there are so many elements of a brand owner. We say a brand owner. So actually, some of the people who might benefit the most from coming to Label Expo would be the brand protection, people involved in brand protection, in logistics and supply chain. Because if you look at these smart technologies, if you look at the inks and environmentally sensitive coatings, for example, heat sensitive or sensitive to different environmental, so sensitive to meat rotting or the freshness type indicators. It's that kind of stuff that half of the self-adhesive label industry is what I would call the functional label industry, and that's really about sort of smart labeling. Whether that has a smart tag in it, whether that's
Right.
sensitive to different conditions. So if you have a chill chain, are you going to be able to monitor that yogurt has kind of stayed at the correct temperature when somebody took the pallet out of the truck and left it in the car park in Florida and for 10 minutes, and these tend to be quite specialist label solutions, and not all label converters who specialize in the wider primary label market are really up to speed with some of these technologies. And I think if you look at brand protection as well, it's a similar story. Most label converters do not have dedicated specialties in brand protection. Some do, bigger ones, who tend
Sure.
to deal with the bigger brands. But you can walk around the show here and get a lot more ideas of kind of what's happening on the brand protection side.
Yes.
And particularly the way that we're linking RFID and QR codes to secure websites. You'll see a lot of blockchain here. And these tend to be things that most label converters, unless they're specifically asked to do it by a customer, generally will pass over.
Yes.
So I think actually, strangely enough, the people who benefit most from brand owners to come would be the logistics, the brand protection, and then I think on the decoration side, to think about particularly where digital embellishment is going and what kind of possibilities that can open up. I have to say, probably not immensely popular, but label converters need to be able to sell these capabilities better. When I walk around, and again, it's not everybody, but there's so much potential now in digital embellishment and the RFID. There's so much possibility that it's hard to kind of, when you get a salesperson going out in front of a customer, and primarily they're looking at delivery time, they're looking at price, they're looking at these, rather than raising their sights to I just bought this amazing hybrid machine. We could do this now to your brand, and to bring an example of that product, to say this could go in a pouch, could also go in a carton. We can color manage between the three. This is where label and packaging converters need to get to in their sales teams. But what brand owners can do in the meantime is they can come to Labelexpo and they can have a look at those technologies. They can see the samples, they can hold them, feel them. And when they go back and they're specifying the next pack or label, thinking about their future marketing, then they've got all these ideas in their heads, and they can then start to proactively go to the, rather than waiting for the converters to come to them with these ideas, they're going to them with the ideas. And now we've got a much better situation. Now we've got
Much better.
dialogue,
Yes. And those brand owners that are smart enough to do that are usually ahead of the curve as far as like their competition goes for that. There's, a little bit of that push-pull, the suppliers having the technology and sharing it with their customers, potential customers, but also it's on the brand owners to stay informed with what technologies are out there, just like you say, so that they have those ideas in their head during ideation. Excellent. Andy, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the rebranding launch that you just announced at Labelexpo Europe. And one last question, I think it's going to be an easy one. The 2026 LOUPE event is going to be where and when?
It's going to be in Chicago, in Rosemont.
Rosemont, yes.
Rosemont in September 2026. So it's
Great.
at the Donald E. Stevens Center, where we've been for many years.
Many years, yes. Andy, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more detail into the news here, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.